Spotlight.
This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, we now bring you a discussion on India's booming aviation sector. The participants are Sharad Kohli, economic analyst, and Nishit Kumar, anchor.
Aviation industry over the years has transformed by leaps and bounds, and to regulate it, the International Air Transport Association, that is IATA, the governing body, was formed. Trade Association of the World's Airlines. It is a matter of great pride that India is hosting the 81st AGM of IATA in New Delhi from the 1st to the 3rd of June this year. India is also hosting the World Air Transport Summit, that is WATS, on the said dates. And to discuss more about it, we are privileged to have with us in our studios Mr. Sharad Kohli, eminent economic analyst. Mr. Kohli, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Kohli, tell us about the genesis, need and development of International Air Travel Association, that is IATA.
Well, like any other trade, there is an association, and this is an International Air Transport Association. It's an association of all airlines, and I think some of our listeners would be interested in knowing that when was this set up in 1945. This is headquartered in Montreal, Canada, and its executive headquarters are in Geneva, Switzerland. About 300 plus airlines rather, are now members of IATA, and it holds a general body meeting. And this particular meeting being held in Bharat Mandapam is being held after more than 40 years, by the way. And I'm sure when the participants and the delegates of IATA come here, they will probably realize that we probably missed coming to India for all these years. Today, India being the third largest aviation industry in the world, well, it was too late for them to come, and I'm sure they're going to come more often here in the times to come. So that's what IATA is. I think if you understand what is the purpose of IATA, it's little more than any other trade association. It sets up standards for safety. It sets up standards for flying, the rules for airline. And a lot of people know that when you see those three letters of the name of the airport, like for example, Delhi is called DEL. These are decided by IATA. And also the names of the airlines, the two alphabet name. For example, Air India has AI, Emirates has EK. So these names are also decided by and approved by IATA. So this also regulates, by the way, the travel agents across the world. So if you're dealing with a travel agent across the world, you can find out from the website if this travel agent is IATA recognized. In fact, a lot of people who've been flying for a number of years, they know what is the difference between an IATA recognized and a non-IATA recognized. So it recognizes, it licenses, it sets up standards, and it decides on the rules of flying, if I put it in simple words.
Right, as you just mentioned that this year the 81st AGM is being held of IATA in New Delhi. It is of course a matter of great pride that India is hosting it. So last time it was held in the year 1983. How do you see this?
Well, I'm sure, as I said, a lot of delegates would regret that why didn't they come here for that long a time, because India has come a long way from the time of 1983. I remember when the first flight in India took place in 1932, when J.R.E. Tata had taken the first commercial flight in India. We've come a very, very long way. And the last 11 years, we've grown by leaps and bounds, from 74 airports in 2014 to 162 airports, with passenger traffic of ranging between 22 to 24 crores. There was a day when in 2024 when we had reached first time 5 lakh people traveling in India in a day. That was a record. That was the first time they reached 5 lakh. But after that, of course, now there have been a lot of occasions. So if you look at the airports, there was a time when the Indian airports were compared with very basic building with no facilities. And today you go to the smallest of the airports. If you leave out a few where also the development is being undertaken, you will find how airports have upgraded themselves. And I think Indian aviation policies have been made in such a manner that airports now are looking world class. So I think safety standards, ground handling, aircrafts, airports, flight timings, punctuality, we have sort of caught up on all the issues, which is why India today is the third largest aviation industry with such a large number of passengers flying. And why should we forget the Hawai Chappal to Hawai Jahaj, where it was the dream of this government to make sure that aircraft is within the reach of the common man. Right. And I think the Udan policy, I would like to particularly mention, launched in 2015, has played a very, very instrumental role in making flying no more is a rich man's game. It is within the reach of any other person. And the three things which Prime Minister spoke in his speech, I would just like to make a very short comment. The first thing he spoke was the market. Today, India provides market to global investors, whether it is from aviation industry or anywhere else. The Indian middle class, 40 to 50 crores is an estimate, but my own estimate as an economic analyst is that it has now crossed 60 crores. We'll almost double the size of America as far as middle class. So we provide such a large market. And second thing he spoke about was the demographic dividends and the talent we have. You fly and you meet the crew, you find them so well groomed, and our pilots are some of the best in the world. So there is no dearth of talent and innovation in India. He did speak about space flights, interplanetary flights, which is getting commercialized. And the third thing he mentioned about was government's open and supportive policy. No industry, including aviation, can grow if the government policies are not supportive and conducive to the growth. I think he mentioned these three things, and I'm sure the delegates have a lot to take home when they fly back to their respective countries. Absolutely. They're not going to forget India as a market, as a innovation hub, and as the sheer size of India. They're not going to forget it for a very long time, which I feel they're going to come back here and hold these general body meetings more often than 40 years.
From the third largest aviation sector, talking of India, to the fourth largest economy in the world, no mean achievement. So this brings with it enormous opportunities and challenges in equal measure. So how do you see the industry's contribution to the overall economy of the country?
Well, I think we should not forget that aviation as such is not a standalone industry. Aviation entwines in it a whole economy. Right. And when you say it entwines a whole economy, that, for example, if a small airport is set up in a town, you will find it leads to growth of the entire town and the region and the state. I mean, we should not see airport as a profit center in itself. So there are questions asked at times that there are these airports set up in smaller towns. And a lot of people ask that, oh, this town has an airport. We never knew that this has got an airport. This never used to be connected to the flights. So I think once an airport comes, it leads to the growth of the business over there. It leads to the overall lifestyle of the people who live around that place. A whole economy revolves around the airport. I think we should not forget that. So therefore, it takes so the challenge which I was going to mention in this was that it takes a while for the airlines to get into profit when they're flying, because as people gradually know, it's like a new business. It takes 1 or 2 years. So airport, I consider, is a new center which has been opened. It takes 1 or 2 years for airlines to make these routes into profitable routes. So I think the challenges are to get them into profit quickly. The other challenge is to make them more affordable, because the cost of air turbine fuel, ATF, that keeps fluctuating, and we know that 86% of our country's energy requirement is still being imported. So that is a challenge, because sometimes when the international crude prices they rise, it leads to a rise in the ATF prices. So that obviously the airlines are compelled, because of the cost reasons, to increase the prices. So I think then it just gets beyond reach of certain people. So that's a challenge, that to make sure that it remains affordable. The dream of Hawai Chappal to Hawai Jahaj should always be sustainable, because once it becomes very expensive, you find that some of the people, they tend to drop out and they look for other options. So that is one challenge. Then I think safety standards is also a challenge. We do hear odd incidents. We heard an incident recently when a flight got stuck in a storm, and there was turbulence and people were worried. But then finally, I think that then that's when the talent comes. The pilots did manage to make it land safely. I think the pilots in India and the aviation experts in India are some of the finest in the world. I have been around the world. I've seen some of the finest airports, and I've flown with some of the best aircrafts around the world. I find that Indian aircrafts, Indian pilots, Indian aviation experts are now at the moment a few notches above the international standards.
Mr. Kohli, besides the challenges that you just mentioned, air connectivity, energy security, sustainable aviation, fuel production, ATF you just mentioned, financing decarbonization, a very important topic. The Honorable Prime Minister also mentioned in his speech, are the key focus areas, and they are actually steering the industry. So how far do you think we have been able to ace the challenges, talking specifically in the Indian context?
Well, that's where, the comment he made about innovation, I think that comes into picture, because when you talk of decarbonization, when you talk of emissions, because the more aircraft fly in the sky, the more the emissions. We talk of emissions of vehicles on the road. Well, we forget that there is emission being made by aircraft in the sky. So the more number of aircrafts, the more emissions. So we are working on environment-friendly fuels, and there's a global level research going on that. And there are experiments already being carried out. I'm sure India will be amongst the first countries to launch these decarbonization measures. India has already committed to zero emissions. And I'm sure these emissions don't just get limited to ground emissions. They also get onto the air emissions. So that has been where safety standards I just spoke about. Leasing of the aircrafts. A lot of people don't know that IATA also manages, along with the local governments of the respective countries, the leasing and financing policies of the aircrafts. And with so many aircraft being ordered by Indian Airlines, more than 2,000 aircraft rather being ordered by Indian Airlines. So there's a lot of aircraft which are going to land in the country as new aircrafts in the times to come. So I think the future of aviation industry is very, very bright, and coupled with government support and policies, I'm sure we are destined to reach the next level.
Prime Minister in his address also mentioned about the app Digi Yatra. He threw open to the audience that you must experience the Digi Yatra app. It's so seamless. It's so kind of just face recognition, and you don't have to carry any document, any sort of all those things to have access to any airport or seamless kind of entry into the aircraft.
डिजी यात्रा ऐप डिजिटल एविएशन का एक उदाहरण है। ये फेशियल वेरिफिकेशन टेक्नोलॉजी के माध्यम से एयरपोर्ट एंट्री से लेकर बोर्डिंग गेट तक सीमलेस यात्रा का कंप्लीट सॉल्यूशन है। मैं समझता हूं भारत के ये इनोवेशंस इतनी बड़ी पॉपुलेशन को बेहतर सर्विसेज देने के एक एक्सपीरियंस से ये कई देशों के काम आ सकता है। यह सिक्योर और स्मार्ट सॉल्यूशन का एक ऐसा मॉडल है जो ग्लोबल साउथ के लिए भी प्रेरणा बन सकता है।
Mr. Kohli, tell us more about Digi Yatra.
Well, that's where technology and innovation comes in. If you're registered at Digi Yatra passenger, all you need to do is to show your face. And a lot of people, I'm sure they are aware that there is a separate entrance for Digi Yatra. So if you find a long queue at the airport to enter, well, Indian airports, by the way, are getting busier and busier. We spoke of the number of passengers growing, and that also leads to queues outside the airport because security cannot be compromised. You need to make sure that every person who's authorized to enter the airport should enter the airport. You cannot just open the airport to anybody, so which leads to queues. Obviously, you need to monitor, scan every person. That's where Digi Yatra comes. So if Prime Minister has sort of invited people to come and join the Digi Yatra, revolution, where once registered, yes, you're right. All you need to do is to show your face. And the moment face recognition happens, all your verification at the gate is done away with. You can simply enter. So it's seamless entry. Just come, get off your vehicle, enter the airport, get your face verified, register on Digi Yatra before, and you're in the airport. So look at the time you save. I mean, people have to start 1 hour before, 2 hours before, sometimes to spend a lot of that time in the queue outside the airport. Imagine you save that time. So I feel time is money. If people are able to save, and especially people who are flying, they're always in a rush, which is why probably the reason they're flying. Otherwise, they could have gone by train. They're short of time. So I'm sure this time is money. And if that time gets saved, this money adds to the overall productivity of the country. So I think the benefits of this cost savings of Digi Yatra is felt over a period of time. And you can only relate to the person who's taken the benefit of Digi Yatra. So I think I'll also like to invite all the listeners to come and join this Digi Yatra revolution to make sure that you have a seamless airport experience.
Now, from our planet to the space, the Prime Minister also talked about the interplanetary movement. How feasible it is and how is it going to shape up in the coming time?
Well, I think the kind of research and experiments being carried out in space flights, and in fact, in some of the countries, we are seeing commercial space flights where people just want to have a 10-minute experience of going up in the weightless, gravity-free area, experience it and come back for thousands of dollars, being spent on that. And I'm sure India is not going to be left far behind. The number of startups that we see in the space area, I'm sure they are going to prove as a propulsion for this whole industry, and they are going to take India to the next level. So you may not be hearing about space flights or interplanetary flights in India yet, but the speed at which India is going to catch up with some of those countries, I think everybody is going to be astonished. And you will see in the next few years with the kind of innovation and research which is happening, especially amongst the younger startups and the way government is supporting them, I think the day is not far when you might find in your itinerary not just America or UK, you will find in your itinerary Mars or Venus or Moon written with a boarding pass.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much, Mr. Kohli, for having come in and shared so much of pearls of wisdom, so much of information.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India's booming aviation sector. The participants were Sharad Kohli, economic analyst, and Nishit Kumar, anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.
Spotlight.